Today, we are stepping into courage and leaving people pleasing behind. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Kerie, here. Welcome, Kerie.
Thank you for having me, Amy.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm also curious about all of the things that you do and how this will play into our discussion as well. But before we get started into all of the juicy goodness, I want to know, have you ever been a people pleaser? And if so, how did that show up in your life?
Yes, I definitely was a people pleaser because when you kind of grow up in a toxic home environment, in order to survive, you do become a people pleaser. I mean, you can do it to avoid being punished or, being humiliated or abused or whatever. And it's a trait that is very debilitating. In the beginning, it serves you. I mean, it really does. It's a survival technique, is what I say. But you get to a place of where you become independent and you're growing up and you realize it's hurting you, no longer helping you in any way. So how do you break that habit? How do you break that cycle and, pattern that you've had for so many years? And we're going to talk about how we do that today.
Love that. Love that. So let's jump right in. We're talking about courage to leave people pleasing behind. Where do you want to start?
So I'm going to share a story of how when I started setting boundaries about always saying yes. And a technique I developed for myself was when someone came and asked me for something and I knew who the ones that would take advantage of me, because there's givers and takers and then people that give and receive, but there's always takers. So when a taker would come to me and ask for a favor or help, I would, instead of say yes, I'd say, let me think about it. And that's not a no and it's not a yes. It's just, let me think about it. I need to look at my schedule. I need to see what I'm doing that day. And it kind of like diffuses an argument by not giving an immediate yes. And so what I would sit down is figure out my time. Time is money. You know, am I going to invest in, how much gas am I going to invest? How much physical labor, mental energy, all of that, emotional, in helping this person out? And is it really, or are they trying to have me fix their problems because they don't want to deal with it? So I had to sit back and look at the whole situation. Am I disabling and enabling this person, or is it really me being supportive and helping them out? So an example that we talked about before was one of my very good friends was moving, and she knows I am fantastic at packing and driving a massive truck. I mean, you name it, I can drive it. And I set a condition that I would help her move, but I'm not going to pack anything. Period. I'm not going to pack anything. I can only help load the truck, drive the truck for her, and help unload it. And that was my agreement. And she said, yes. I said, okay, great. So cleared my schedule to come that day, went to her house. She had the van outside, walk in her door. Nothing was packed. Nothing. And she made the assumption that, oh, I would just be yes, ma'am, and help her pack everything. And I said, no, I didn't sign up for this. I know you're going to be mad at me and I love you, but I didn't sign up for this, because in order to pack all this stuff, it's going to take us hours. And then we got to load the truck. Then we got to unload the truck. I don't have time for that. And I said, so why don't you call some people to help you pack? And when you got a bunch of stuff packed, then I will help load up the van. I'll drive it and all of that. And yes, she got mad at me and has not this day asked me to help her move again. But I had to set that limit because I knew I was being taken advantage of, and that really wasn't fair.
Yeah, that's a really great example that clearly, I know for myself, I have many examples that I can see in that
Yeah.
story. And and I guess what I'd like to know is, how did you find or uncover, or how can you help us, those people who are on this journey to be recovering people pleasers? How can you help us find that courage? How did you find the courage?
Um, the Back in 2012, I woke up one day and was told, "You're going to write this book. Here's a table of
Mm,
contents. Sit down in front of your computer and start typing." So it's
wow.
what people would call a calling. And I just started typing, typing, typing. And when I got to chapter 2, I learned about the power of our emotions. And the book that I wrote was Affirming and Focusing on Living a Better Life.
Mm,
And in there, I just like downloaded what is 3D human consciousness, what is 4, what is 5. And there's images on Master the Upper Rooms, free stuff, free images. It looks like this. And this
mm,
breaks down all of 3D human consciousness. So in that category of people pleasing, there's self-doubt. There is where times you feel helpless, or you feel like a burden, and you want to feel, like you are contributing to society. You want to feel good. And so that's why we people please. When we feel sometimes anxiety or guarded or hypervigilant or even angry or impatient, that's all 3D human consciousness. And the
mm,
very first step into 4D is courage. It's where you
mm,
have a healthy sense of pride. You're confident, you're secure. We call them heroes. And it's actually where you can solve your problems. Because a good example is when everybody gets mad, what do we tell them to do? Calm down. Because we know if they do something in that state of anger, they're going to regret it. They're going to make a mistake. And they've got to calm down and raise their energy up to find the positive solutions instead of the destructive solutions down there.
right.
And so for me, I had to really honor myself. I had to build a strong relationship with me. And so that's why I say all the tools we need for yourself and for dealing with others is in 4D human consciousness, which is forgiveness, compassion,
Mm,
there's patience, there's cooperation, there's acceptance. There's
yeah,
understanding, because a lot of times once we understand something, we're not like so black and white. We can see the gray areas in between, and we can make better decisions, better choices. And two, when we forgive someone, I mean, and that's true, when we all make a mistake, what do we say? Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Yeah. So when it
yeah.
comes to people pleasing, it's really looking at it is, where am I stuck in the lower levels of 3D human consciousness? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Am I hungry for attention? Do I get jealous all the time? And am I an adrenaline junkie? Where
Mm,
am I? And then looking up above at the chart for 40 and seeing, what do I need to give myself? And
mm.
maybe what do I need to give this person that I'm talking to or working with? I tell people, if you're in HR or management, these are perfect tools to help, your employees.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So what I'm hearing you say is there are specific emotional states or frequencies
Yes.
that we can be in to help us move into that place of courage.
Yes.
And would you say then what I heard is this: in order to get to courage, we can look to these other aspects of the 4D, like patience or forgiveness or compassion. We can look to these other aspects to build the courage that we have.
Yes. To build it in a way where it kind of takes, the best way to put it is, it can soften the blow, because a lot of
Mm,
times we are so harsh and critical on ourselves. We say
mhm.
things to ourselves we would never say to someone that we love. So a lot of this is things we need to do for us, where we need to show us kindness, we need to show us patience and cooperation, because we live in a world where we want instant gratification, instant this, instant that. And we need to learn to slow down. I mean, there's a reason why
Mhm.
they say, stop and smell the flowers,
Mhm.
stop and look at these things. And that's the key thing, is self-awareness is so important,
Right.
because when you are self-aware and you notice something, it's I look at it as awareness is information. But when you're not self-aware, what do? We immediately go into judgment. And when we judge, that's when we slide down that slippery slope. And if you can be self aware and not take things personal or internalize it, you look at it as it's just information. Okay, this person's asking for a favor. I have a choice. Do I want to get angry and pissed off because they're asking me over and over again because they know I'm the yes ma'am? Or do I want to stay in my power and stay grounded and balanced and have the courage to say, let me think about it? And
Yes,
that takes
I love
courage.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Let
love
me
I
let
love
me
the
think about it.
simplicity of that, of the let me think about it. Uh, Give me some time to
Yeah.
get back to you. So, one of the other things that caught my attention about your story was the idea of creating a very clear agreement. And interestingly, even though from the way you're telling the story, I took it to be quite a clear and complete agreement that this was the way you were going to say yes with these particular boundaries and this in this framework. And it's interesting to me that despite the clarity and the clear communication, the person ignored the agreement. So I guess my question is, if you had to do it again with this individual, how might you change that agreement or clarify it further in order to ensure or provide the possibility that it was going to follow through in the way that you had intended?
Well, I think a part of it was definitely lack of communication, because I did let her know that if you need me to help you pack a few days before, I'm available at these days and these times. And so I said, if you want to write that down, write it down, because I'm self-employed. I mean, and at the time I was a single mom. So it's
Mhm.
like you're asking a lot of me to do this. And so the thing is she had the opportunities to ask me, say, hey, I mean, she could have even called me that day and said, I'm in this situation. What's your advice? And what I would have told her is, don't get the truck. Just
Yeah.
hold off on the truck. I'll come over and I'll just help you pack, and we'll do it another day. I would have done that. I seriously would have done that. But she didn't give me that opportunity. When I
Mhm.
showed up there, because she was mad. She's like, well, I already paid for the truck. I already did the deposit, all that. And I'm like, well, it's just going to be sitting here. So
Mhm.
she really didn't think it through. And that's the hard thing, is a lot of times we take on their problems and make it our problems. And I
Yeah.
realized, this is not my problem. I'm trying to help you and be supportive, but you created this chaos. I
Mhm.
didn't.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing that you're noting is it's not our problem to take on, and I'm glad that you didn't. It sounds like you didn't assume the negativity or go into a negative spiral about the fact that she was angry about you or at you. That's really really great to hear that that didn't happen. And I'm curious, what as I'm hearing the story, for those people who are like, okay, I'm going to ask for the time to think about it. I'm going to put down a solid agreement. I'm going to do my best to communicate this clearly. The layer on the other end, I think, is potentially to ask what the person has heard on the other end and what they're agreeing to.
Yes, have them validate back. Exactly. Because a lot of times, as you know, people aren't really listening. They're thinking about what they're going to say next.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes. And
It's so
so,
interesting.
and that was the hard part, because even the week before we were going to do it, I called her up and I just let her know, hey, I'm available for this, and this, these days, these times. And she was like, oh no, I'm okay. I'm going to be good. I'm getting the packing done. And she wasn't really being honest. And it's hard because you're not there to see, are they really packing? Have they really done something?
Yeah, I hear that. So I wanted to continue to loop back around to, you've mentioned these dimensions of human consciousness. Are there any other links to understanding that information and people pleasing that would be valuable for us to know about?
Yes, actually, on Master the Upper Rooms, I have a podcast. I interviewed Suzanne Kohlberg, and she's actually going to be, I think, next week on a special on Podmatch all about that kind of stuff. And yes, I have her interview on there, which is great. And she shares her story of being a people pleaser because she was definitely, a yes, ma'am. And it's hard because we want to be kind to people. We want to help people out, but then there's people that take advantage of that kindness. And they don't respect you. And you think they do. You think they're your friends sometimes, but in reality, sometimes they're really not. They're just taking, they're takers. Take.
Yeah.
There's that you can also go to, and this is just something that's kind of new. If you're dealing with toxic people, unhealthy people, I have another podcast called The Undetected Narcissist, and I'm the author of that book, Angela Meyer. That's my pen name. And I break down a lot of stuff in there of how to deal with them, how to spot them, how to communicate with them. I also did a thing about the walls we build, and healing happens in layers because, we think, oh, I should be done healing by now. And let's say you're not. And I break all this stuff, down for you. And I even talk about grace through acceptance, because there are times where we deal with these toxic people. And I taught myself this technique called seeds blowing in the wind. And so when you think about it, you're talking to a toxic person, and when they say something that's going to trigger you, it's a seed blowing in the wind. And the only one that grabs it and waters it is us, with our anger, our disappointment. How dare you? And they want that sometimes to happen. They want you to be reactive instead of grounded, balanced, and centered. And so what I do is I always remember that's a seed. Do I want to lose sleep over it, or do I want to let it just blow on by?
That's
And
a very
it's
cool
my
metaphor.
saving grace, grace. Because I can't change them. I can only change how I react and respond to the situation.
Yes, and that's where your power lies, right? And that's, I think, an opportunity also, as we're talking about courage, is to look at proof from your own life where you've demonstrated courage, proof where you've demonstrated that resilience, proof where you've done things that line up for who you are, and keep a journal or record of that, so you can go back to that and find the energy and the momentum from those positive moments.
Yes, because it like surprised the heck out of my son one time where I was around a toxic family member, and we were talking about something rather deep. And I guess they got irritated about the subject, and they said to me, and I let it blow right on by, oh, your rambling sounds like you're schizophrenic. And it triggered my son so bad that when the
Wow.
person left, and my son was like, how could you stand them saying that to you? It was so horrible. I'm like, that's their projection. That's not me. That's
Yeah.
them. And he was like, dude, I was amazed. You sat there and you said nothing. You just let it blow on by. And I said, yeah, because I know they wanted me to fight. They were triggering me, baiting me to get in an argument. And I wasn't going to take the bait. I just let it float by. And he's like, I want to learn to do that. And I'm like, you can. Think about it as a seed blowing in the wind.
Yeah. And some people might say, well, how? It's that action of visualizing the moment
Yes.
as a seed,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it is. And you got to remember, if I grab it and I water it, I'm only hurting myself.
That's on you.
It's all on me. It's not them. They wanted me to grab it and water it and get angry and all flustered, because then maybe I will say yes. Maybe then I will go back to my people pleasing ways. But no, this isn't about me. This is about them. And I just let it go.
Beautiful, beautiful. You said another metaphor while we were chatting in our original time together, about letting everyone come into the garden and making doors. Do you remember that metaphor?
Yes,
Can you share
yes.
that one?
Yes, it's on one of the podcast episodes I did, and it was really beautiful. It was a metaphor story about a woman that had a beautiful garden and let everybody in, and people went in and they picked flowers without asking permission. They trampled on the ground and they acted like it was theirs when it wasn't. And so she realized that she needed to create doorways instead of walls.
Mm.
And people had to earn it to get to the next level. And it's like, and I do have the image on the blog post about the circle of friendship, because a lot of times when we're a people pleaser, we want everyone to be our BFF. And then we get burnt. It's better to have 5 or 6 really good friends that will be there for you no matter what, than 30, 40, 50 people that just don't care about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful metaphor story, because she still had this beautiful garden, but now it was sacred. She honored it, she valued it, instead of letting everyone come in and just trample it and not respect it.
Yes. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So you've mentioned your podcast. I hope that people will go check that out, Master the Upper Rooms podcast. I'll be sure to drop that in the show notes as
Yeah,
well.
and the
Your
undetected
book,
narcissist.
yes,
Yeah.
your book, The Undetected Narcissist. There will be a link for free downloads. There's free audios there. It's awesome how much value you provide for your audience. And is there any final closing thoughts that you would give to people who really want to step into that courage and leave people pleasing behind?
If anyone's like really, really stuck and they tried so many different ways, I do offer like a free 15-minute consultation. You want to talk to me, you tell me, I call it your pain story, where you're stuck, and I'll tell you, what I can do, or here's my suggestions, or try this, try that. And a lot of times I just give free advice. But if you feel like, no, I want to work with you, then I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm getting that would be good for you, and we go from there. But yes, it's about you having happiness in your life and living a life that you love, instead of just existing and being that people pleaser.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Well, as I said, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wonderful wisdom and very relevant stories that have helped people, I know, gather some data here to help themselves. So thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to the listeners of Power to the People Pleasers, I'm so grateful and honored that you tune in once again. And I wanted to highlight the new book, Celebrate Yourself, is out. It's available on Amazon. Make sure you grab yourself a copy. My friends, please stay tuned for the next episode of Power to the People Pleasers, coming